All right. Welcome to this talk about the evolution of enterprise Java. It's a kind of a little history lesson, at least in the beginning. My name is Ivar Grimstad. I'm the Jakarta EE developer advocate at Eclipse Foundation. And if you want to reach out to me on social medias, you can just choose whatever is your favorite one. I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm a Java champion. I'm an Oracle Ace Pro. I'm representing Eclipse Foundation in the JCP Executive Committee. And I'm also actually a committer for Apache for NetBeans. And I run a Java user group in Malmö in Sweden, where I'm living. So I'm going to do this as a past, present, and future kind of way. So let's start with some in the past. And I guess most of the talks here at JavaOne this year is about, it's 30 years ago. And how many of you were not born when Java was born? Yeah, sort of quite a few. Yeah. So it's a long time ago. and Java was, as also you saw at the keynote, it was developed for devices, like set-top boxes and that kind of thing, for UI and applets and web browsers. But it soon took on the server. And so J2EE came along. And J2EE is probably, I like to say, that's the reason why Java is still around. Because it's on the server we've been. And J2EE was a tremendous success, and it's powering most of the financial things that goes on in the world today. So that was a super success. So let's look back a little bit of how J2EE kind of conquered the world. So let's say you have this simple class. It's going to say, happy birthday, Duke. And we're going to turn this into an EJB. Because that was what we did in J2EE. So what we do, we put it in a class file. And then I need to warn you a little bit. Because if you haven't seen this before, it can be a little bit hard on the eyes. So what you do is you take this class, and it has to implement an interface, the session bean, which implements the enterprise bean, which implements serializable. And then you also have to create these interfaces. So we need the local home, the remote, and the hello local home. So all of these four, so we can call them remotely and locally. So all of this are interfaces we have to implement. And these extends these EJB local object, EJB object, EJB home, EJB local home, which again all extends remote. And then the server vendors has to generate some code as well. So you get the home local object, the hello object, the hello home object, and the hello local home object. So of course this is kind of daunting, right? It is the small hello in the corner that we wanted to do, and all this kind of ceremony around it. So obviously it is a little bit over-engineered, and this is what we had to create ourselves. Below it was generated by the vendors. On the top was what was provided by the J2EE APIs, and then on the top it's Java SE. So all of this were packaged down in a jar file called EJB jar. A couple of XML descriptors, one for the deployment descriptor for the EJB, and then maybe one for the vendor-specific stuff. So all of these EJB jars were kind of packaged together into an EAR, an enterprise archive, and then you can create an application around it. So it's a lot of stuff. It kind of looks like what we're doing with Kubernetes today.
So true.
Yes, and of course this was a little bit too hard, a little bit too much ceremony. So somebody wanted to correct that. So Spring came along in 2004, and with Spring 4, or Spring, the first kind of versions there, we have the same class. We put this in a class file, and then we described it in a bunch of XML files. So we went from having a couple of deployment descriptors to more XML files, all these bean descriptor files that were nested. And if you remember these days when you would try to debug where did this bean come from, it wasn't easy. So we went from one complexity to another, but at least we packaged it in the web archive and didn't have the enterprise archive around it. So a little bit simpler, but still fairly complex. Java EE came around in 2006. How many are getting recruiters on LinkedIn looking for J2EE developers? So it's been 20 years since that name went away. But still it's there. The people behind Spring also created the add inject, the JSR 330. So you can use add inject and add autowired in Spring interchangeably. So we got the annotation-based programming model. So if we look at this EJB after that time, the only thing we had to do was put the annotation as stateless on it. So no more interfaces, no more generated. Oh, it was generated behind the scenes, but this is what we did. So we went from, remember, the big one, and when we packaged this one, we can take this EJB, just put it in directly in the Warren jar. We didn't need to have the EJB jars any longer. So we went from this to that one class file. So that is a fairly good step. So luckily, we can take this away. Yeah. So the past wasn't beautiful. It worked. It was kind of over-engineered. But let's look at what's going on today. And of course, in 2014, Spring Boot came along and kind of changed everything again. And made things more opinionated and also generates a lot of stuff for you and you get it in. Java EE became Jakarta EE in 2017 when it moved to the Eclipse Foundation. In 2020, we did Jakarta EE 9, where we changed the package name from JavaX to Jakarta. And I guess everybody here has, in some way or the other, been affected by that. And even Spring developers. And probably a Spring community where was it hit the hardest, because when you upgrade from Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3, you don't only get these namespace changes, you get also the incompatibility in Spring. So that upgrade was kind of hard, and also the dependencies you're relying on. But it also did a fine cleanup in the ecosystem. So if you now find a dependency out there that is on the JavaX namespace, you know it's not maintained any longer. So you don't use it. You find something else. So it kind of gives you an indication what's been maintained. And now, today, we're looking at Jakarta EE 11. So let's look at the Jakarta EE releases. As I said, the Jakarta EE 9 didn't do any changes from E8 to 9 because we wanted this migration to be as easy as possible. So no API changes, just the namespace. Otherwise, it would have been a totally different story today. In 2022, we released Jakarta EE 10, where we introduced a new profile called the core profile. I'll explain that in a bit. And right about now, we are releasing Jakarta EE 11. So we do the about 2 years release cadence of the Jakarta EE platform. So what is Jakarta EE then? How many here are Jakarta EE developers or using Jakarta EE directly? And if we look at Spring, yeah, some more of you. Yeah. So Jakarta EE and Spring are different in that Spring is a framework, whereas Jakarta EE is about specifications. And the specifications are a human-readable document that describes the technology. It's an API that is in the Maven Central that we are using in our IDEs. And it's a TCK or test compatibility kit that we use to test and verify that an implementation fulfills every requirement that is in the specification. And when it does that and passes all the tests in the TCK, it is a compatible implementation. And we can have multiple compatible implementations. But we need at least one open source to call this specification final, so we know that it is possible to implement. The current release, unfortunately, is still Jakarta EE 10. We have released parts of 11, but this is kind of what's out there available today. Jakarta 11 is coming. So this is how 10 looked like. So from 8 to 9, we did no changes. from 9 to 10, we did a lot of changes. So more than half of the specifications were updated between these releases. And it continues. If we compare it to what's coming in 11, we continue to update about half of the specifications and add some new, like Jakarta Data. So let's look more in detail on Jakarta 11. All the specifications is, as a whole is also a specification, and that's the Jakarta E11 platform. And that contains all the specifications of Jakarta 11. A subset of the platform is the web profile. And web profile is targeting more traditional web applications where you maybe have some persistence, some security, some UI, or RESTful web services. And then it was the new core profile that was introduced in Jakarta E10, which is targeting the microservices or RESTlet, RESTful web services or headless services or whatever you call them. It's kind of, you create a REST service. And this is the stack of specification that is needed for that. An interesting specification here is the CDI Lite. And CDI Lite is a subset of CDI that has removed the dynamic properties of CDI. So it's not resolved at runtime, but it is resolved at compile time. So you can compile to native and using GraalVM if you want to. Jakarta 11, all the API sources there are compiled to 17. So you have to be at least on 17 in order to use Jakarta 11. But we make sure that they run on 21 as well. And some of them run on newer versions as well. But we guarantee that it runs on 17 and 21. And this brings us to the kind of release cadence I was hinting on earlier. When there is an LTS of Java, or what we in common language call an LTS of Java, is every second year. So the previous one was Java 21. The next one is going to be Java 25, which is in September this year. So it's about 6 to 9 months after that, we want to release a release of Jakarta EE. So 11 was supposed to come out last year. 12 is supposed to come out next year, because that will be, June next year will be about 9 months after the release of Java 25. And we're still aiming for that. What we did with this release was to release milestones. So we were done with this release in May, well within the timeline for releasing it in summer last year. All the specifications were feature complete. The API jars were released. Each one had a compatible implementation. For example, Hibernate for Jakarta persistence, or Jetty and Tomcat for servlet. And all of these passed the TCK. So every specification, these components were released, but not the platform. That is still on milestone 4. And the reason for that is that we're doing a major refactoring of the TCK for the platform. We're moving it from technology that was invented and used when the TCK was originally written 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago, and moving it to more modern ways of testing. So we're using JUnit 5 and Archillion, for example. And that effort has been more bigger than we anticipated. So they're still working on that refactoring, but they're getting there. So I say partially released because the core profile was released in December. So that is out there available. There are compatible implementations readily available to use. Web profile is about to get out. A certification request and everything, the material is being put together. The only reason why the release review of this release hasn't started yet is because I'm here on the stage. Otherwise, I would be preparing this stuff. So maybe later this week or next week, that release review will start. So by the end of the month, web profile is out there. Jakarta 10 has a lot of cross-cutting concerns across these specifications. And one of them is managed beans that has been around for a while. It isn't really fulfilling anything since there are fully good alternatives in CDI. So we're taking managed bins away. There are some optional features, some of the SOAP and Corba things that are they're still there, possible to use, but they've been optional for the platform for a long time. And what we've done is to say that we don't want optional features in the platform because that makes it more difficult for a new vendor to implement the platform. So those that already are implementing will probably continue to do so, but we won't require it for new implementations. So we're taking them away for the platform core profile and web profile. So they're still there. So if you're using any of these, don't worry. They will be around for as long as you are using them and your whatever product you're using are supporting it. The security manager was deprecated for removal in 4.11. In 4.86, it's disabled by default. And that's in Java 25, I think. Yeah? So we just made sure that every reference we have to the security manager is taken away. We almost made it for this release, but there are still some references here and there in 11. So in 12, it will be completely gone. We also want to embrace Java records since we now are past Java 16, so records are available for us. Since 17 is the minimum, then we want to have records where it makes sense to have them. The security specifications are actually 3 specifications. And now I'll just go through a couple of these, and then we'll get to the demo. Jakarta Security are introducing some new nifty features for developers, like the multiple authentication mechanism, to possible to have that in your application. Now, usually these days you do this on the load balancer or outside the applications. You really don't need to do this within your application. But if you're doing, you can have some sort of authentication handler and have different authentication mechanisms for different parts of your application. And you can do that within the application. So if you have a small system, that makes sense. Otherwise, you usually have this outside the application anyway. We're doing some bridge stuff to make the JSON Web Token authentication available. So there's a bridge specification between Jakarta Security and microprofile JSON Web Token. You can also, this is something we had planned for EE8, the in-memory identity store definition, which is perfect for testing. Don't do this in production. But it's good for testing, so you don't have to have an identity store available if you're just testing some classes. You can just do it in memory like this. You can also do the programmatically create some custom policies, like this is if you're in the foo role and it's without working hours, you're not served beer or whatever it is. So you can have this programmatic way of giving access. And there are 3 security specifications. One thing we're thinking of is moving them together as one, because the important one is the one on the bottom, the security 4.0. That's where the API for developers are. The others are more SPIs for the vendors and implementers. Concurrency, that's an interesting one. So there we add supports for virtual threads. So you remember we can run on 21. And there are also some others, but let's focus on the virtual threads. As you probably know, the Jakarta EE has a little ambivalent relationship with threads. We kind of love them, but we don't want you to touch them. So it's we have all these managed services that kind of handles threads for you. And we thought we can probably do the same thing for virtual threads. And this is where it may or may not make sense. That's kind of where you as developers, if you start using it, will see if it makes sense or not, because virtual threads are so much cheaper to create. So maybe it does not make sense to have them managed in this way, but at least we have some support for it. But then you may ask, well, how are we going to do this? Since we're on 17 with the API level and we compile to 17. But we had a solution for that. What we're doing is we're not doing any API things for virtual threads. So it's not exposed, or it doesn't bleed through the API. But we add flags where it makes sense, like in this managed thread factory definition annotation. We add the flag, you can set virtual to true, and it's default to false. And this is a hint to the implementers. If you are supporting virtual threads, see if you can give me one. Otherwise, you will get a platform thread. So it's kind of, it's not a super promise. And it's solved by this Java SE runtime aware support for virtual threads, where if you're on 21 and you set this flag somewhere to true, you will get a virtual thread if it's there, and the vendor implements it. If you're on 17 or something else, you will get a platform thread. So it's still platform thread is the default, but you may get a virtual thread if your implementation supports it. So look at the demo for that. And this demo I created this morning, and I had good help from Steve from Pyara. So this is where we've discussed and troubleshoot and see why it didn't work. But then we figured it out. So I hope. So let's look at this. This application is, you can see here, I'm on 17. And that's because I want to show this runtime aware support. I could have been on 24 as well. And I here have the Jakarta EE web API. I activated the staging property because it's been staged. So I can access it. You can access it as well with the staging. So I'm using the latest version that is not released yet. And I'm can run it, and that is the interesting thing with Jakarta EE is this is where the POM file usually ends. Right? You have this provided dependency, and if you're not doing any crazy other stuff, this is all you need. So it's not like the Spring POM file where we have all these plugins that pull in a lot of dependencies for you. And this is a good thing both for security and for bug fixes. So what I've added here is a couple of plugins so I can run the different implementations. I have Open Liberty here. I have Pyara. Both of them support their stuff perfectly well. I'll use Open Liberty for this demo, though. So let's look at the code. It is a Jakarta RESTful application. It sends the REST application, and it just has the API endpoint. And I have a resource here where I've added this managed thread factory definition, where I ask for a virtual thread. And then here I do the lookup to this thread factory. And I can obtain a thread from this and just run it. And then I'll print it out so we can see what kind of thread it is. So let's start this one. I'll go here and take clean pack. It'll build it so you know I'm not cheating. I'll use the staging profile and liberty run. So while this is getting up, you can see now it's checking the applications. And you can see I'm running on 17. That's why it's a little slow. We can run it on 24 afterwards and see that it's faster. But it should be getting up. It's usually not this slow. I wonder what's happening here. This is the demo ghost. I hope it's not looking for some internet. Let's just get online and see if it does. So what I'll actually do is kill it and start it again, because it seems like maybe it's just my terminal that's not showing all. All right. Yeah, so it's up and running. And if I now do the, just call this threads endpoint, you can see the task submitted. That's this one. And let's look at the log statement here. You can see I get a platform thread. And that's because I'm Java version. I'm running on 17. So if I change this one to a newer version, at least 2021. So I'll use 24 since that's the latest version. Anybody started using 24? It was released yesterday. What are you waiting for? So now I don't even have to. I won't rebuild it. I'll just rerun it. Because we don't need to recompile it. So I'll just start it, because it's much faster now. And if I now do the task submitted, and now you can see I have a virtual thread. So it will give you a virtual thread if it has it implemented. So whether it makes sense to have this way of obtaining a virtual thread or not, or you can just do it yourself, I'm not sure, but at least it's there. So you can use it if you want. Let me go and kill that. So and concurrency is version 3.1. That's where virtual thread support was added. It's other things in concurrency as well, but I just focused on the virtual thread. CDI are supporting records, so you can inject records. Priority and producers can be useful if you're producing beans. And we're also moving some integration requirements from CDI to the platform. And that comes in handy if we down the road. Most of these integration requirements are how CDI beans interact with the EJBs. And as you know, EJBs are kind of when I say EJB, you think of this big class diagram, even though it's much easier now. But because of that kind of long-term memory of especially the older people that has experienced the old J2EE EJBs, we may remove EJBs sometime in the future, and that is easier if everything of the integration stuff is in the platform. So let's look at persistence. It's adding Java records as embeddable classes. It also, rather than having the custom @persistent context way of obtaining your entity manager, you can now use @inject. So it's CDI enabled. There is also a persistent configuration class, so you can do the configuration of your persistence in programmatically. You don't need the persistent XML file, because we know also, I don't know what's the obsession with not having to edit an XML file now and then, but people don't like it. So now we can do it programmatically. And I'll next time I do this talk, I'll put some example code there, but it's fairly easy. The biggest change is actually to deprecate the old calendar stuff. And when we say replace with sort of the new Java time API, but if we're honest, wasn't that Java 8 that was introduced? So it's not that new. Or even before, maybe.
No,
it's Java 8, yeah. So it's about time that we start using the local date and local date time on these objects, also with the database. So it's not taken away, it's just deprecated. So bean validation, probably use that a lot of validation in Spring. If you have the @not-null or @email or min or max @valid, that will now support to validate records as well. It has sort of supported and worked in some of the implementations, but now it's actually specified in Jakarta Validation 3.1. RESTful web services is more of a mentally preparation release. It's not that much changes for us as developers, but they're also, if you remember the @persistent context annotation in persistence, they have some similar annotations around resources and context and stuff in Jakarta RESTful web services, and they're kind of mentally preparing now for using @inject there as well. But they have some convenience methods here and there. But the biggest change there was actually to remove the hard required dependency on XML binding, because that's optional in the platform. So that was why they actually had to do a major release. So annotations, they do one thing. They remove the managed beans annotation. So it's not a big change, but it's still there. data. That's more interesting. So there are a lot of Spring developers out there, and you probably know about Spring Data. Anybody using Spring Data? Yeah. So the Jakarta Data is also standardizing the repository pattern for data access. And if you look at this code, it looks fairly much like what you're used to, doesn't it? And this is actually Jakarta Data. So we're not stealing it. We're just recognizing that this is something good. This is something developers use. It's an established technology. So let's standardize it. So we're adding this to Jakarta Data. So Jakarta developers can also enjoy the programming model of Spring Data. But we're doing more. We're also adding a subset of the Jakarta Persistent Query Language, which is called the Jakarta Data Query Language, JDQL. That makes you able to do queries with this query language as annotation based, so you don't have to rely on the method names, because that can sometimes not be a good idea. Let's look at the demo there. So the data application is, this is also very much like here I'm running on 24. Also have the web API, nothing else. And the other things here are just to make OpenLiberty and run. So I'll use that as a runtime here as well. And this time I do the Maven clean package. Staging, Liberty run, because they have the, no, I'll actually use Liberty dev, because they have this development mode, so you don't have to restart the server. You just do the changes and it picks up. So it's a very fast feedback loop for developers. If you look at the code here, it's the same as the example I had for virtual threads. I have a resource here, greetings. I have a getter where I can get a list of greetings. Now it's empty. And I have a post where I can add greetings. And I have the greeting object itself, which is a Jakarta persistence entity. So this code would more or less run in Spring Data, this entity, so this can be used directly with Spring Data JPA. So if I want to implement something here, I can. We can first just check that it's actually doing something. So if I now do a get for this one, you see it's an empty list. There are nothing in the data yet. If I post something, it will say, yeah, it's posted, but it's still nothing there, because I haven't implemented the database logic. So if I go and do that, I can take a new Java class. It's going to be an interface, and it will be greeting repository. I can extend, extends the CRUD repository. And is it from long to greeting, or is it the other way around? I can't remember. Is it right? Let's just check the slides. Just see if it's a long time since I did this one, so I'll just check. Where are we? Oh, at the bottom. There. Greeting to long, yeah. So it's the other way around. Sorry. Just do this. Greeting to long. So now I have this. This is exactly what we would do in Spring Data, and I'd add the. I got the Norwegian keyboard layout. Let's get the Swedish one. So it's a repository. There you go. So you see, it's the Jakarta Data repository, not Spring Data. I have my greeting resource. I can now do the add inject greeting repository. like this, and now I can, rather than doing an empty list, I can do a find all to list. And as you see here, I have all the save, the find by ID, and everything you would expect. So now I will query the database when I do this call. So if I go here and do the query, there are some. I added the Duke hello from JavaOne that comes from the database.
Which database?
I'm running a Postgres database. And I have here I haven't done the programmatic persistent XML, so I have this, the data source definition, and the liberty is configured to use the password that everybody is using in production everywhere. So you don't have to write that down. You know it. So and what I can do more is also here I can do the greeting repository. Not this one. I deliberately turned off the AI support because it was so annoying to have all these suggestions coming when I was on stage. So there you go. And I can take this saved. So I just make sure I've saved the greeting in the database, and then I can print something here saved with ID. Saved get ID, something like that. So now if I do, let's call this the data Duke. No, not there. Let's go to this one. Data Duke, like this. Data Duke 2025. Like this, and I add this one to the database, and now I should add both of them in the database, which you would expect. Right? So we know it works, and of course, as with Spring Data, I can add a optional greeting. Find by name, ignore case with the string name. Something like that. And when I've done that, I can implement a method where I can find one of them. I'm only interested in JavaOne 2025 because that's where we are. So I've cheated a little bit here. So I have a get that returns a string, takes in a name, calls it find by name, ignore case, gets a message from that one, and writes not found if it's not found. So if I now do the REST call again for this one, and call this one and say I'm only interested in data Duke, and you see it's case insensitive, so now it says hello from JavaOne 2025. So you see the developer productivity and the feedback loop is so fast. I don't have to restart anything; it's just there. And we have the same programming model as with Spring and Spring Data. That's pretty cool. Okay, so we're past this demo. So there's an opportunity there. We don't have an implementation at Eclipse Foundation or Apache yet. Glassfish does use Hibernate. So if you want to contribute to Eclipse Link or Apache OpenJPA, there's an opportunity there for being a hero in open source and earn some good credits around there and maybe get a ribbon on next JavaOne. So let's look at a little bit of the future. This is this is present Jakarta EE. So let's look at the future. And then we're looking at Jakarta EE 12. And we're still aiming for summer 2026. And we have started the planning, and we're looking at what should be in this release. So first of all, we want to base this one on 21. But we will run it on 21 and 25. So this is kind of the way we've done with every release since 9, is that we choose the previous LTS, but supports the newest LTS. And that means that we can use Java 25 features. And actually, Jakarta EE12 will be out when Java 26 is out. So you would be able to use Java 26 with this one. But we guarantee it on 25. There will be a Jakarta Data update that are having plans out there. Small updates, it's not a big one. Jakarta NoSQL just released their 1.0 release. So this is a candidate for inclusion in the specification. Hopefully we can get in Jakarta NoSQL. We'll see. There will be a vote on the platform call, and we will decide and discuss and figure it out. But it was a candidate for both. They wanted to be a candidate for 10 and 11, but they didn't release anything until they did it now a couple of weeks ago. So Jakarta NoSQL is now a actual candidate for inclusion in the next platform release. And a fun fact there is that Eclipse JNoSQL actually implements Jakarta Data. And Eclipse JNoSQL is the implementation of Jakarta NoSQL. Naming is easy. So Jakarta MVC has been around for a while. It's in version 3.0 now. And Jakarta MVC, but it's never been part of the platform. It adds a couple of annotations and a little bit of stuff around Jakarta RESTful Web Services. So if you know how to create Jakarta RESTful Web Services, it's just a couple of more annotations to learn, and you can use the resources as controllers. And now that server-side rendering is actually getting hot again, even in the JavaScript world, we've done it for 30 years. We know how it's done. It's not the new kids that are inventing it in React server-side component or whatever they call it. They're just doing what we have done for 30 years. So we just need to go out there and tell them and bring MVC back again, and that would be a good thing. Well, look, this is my thing. That's just an idea. Jakarta Crack, Crack works, coordinated restore at checkpoint. It's an OpenJDK project. And Jakarta EE works fine with Crack. We need to figure out a way how to kind of talk a little bit back and forth to the container, so how they should restore and relive the resources and stuff. But it is a fun idea. Probably not for 12, but somewhere down. It has to be in the JDK before we can even talk about it. But we can at least look what's going on there. And why not look at some AI stuff? I think we need to have AI in the slides. So this is my AI contribution there today. There could be some discussions at least. Probably not a specification yet. You know how fast it is. Every time you try a new version of LangChain4j or Spring Data, Spring AI, you have to recompile, build all the code, and fix everything again because it's changing every time. It's such a fast-paced evolvement here. So it's not ready for specifications or standardization yet, but we can at least discuss it. Replace EJBs. Could be done. How about if we have, you remember, this is how an EJB looks today. It's not that hard. But if we want to get rid of EJBs, we should have something that can replace it. So what about a @service annotation that is actually a CDI stereotype, something like this? This is what is proposed. But if it will be exactly this or something else. But this is a proposal out there. So this would, in effect, replace stateless EJBs with CDI. If you want to check out what we're thinking for EE12, not all of this will be, but on our GitHub tracker on the platform project, we have the EE12 label, so you can click on that one and see what's listed. And if there is something you want to see there, you can just add an issue, and we will add the EE12 label for you. So to sum up, we have 2 minutes left. Jakarta EE9 was the namespace change. You all experienced that. We're not doing that again, so don't worry. There are some tools you can use if you haven't done it yet. And if you have some weird libraries that are not maintained any longer and you just want to move them over on the Jakarta namespace so you at least compile your code, try out the Eclipse transformer or the Apache Tomcat migration tool, and that will transform the bytecode for you. So you don't have to open the file even. You just drop the jar file on command line and run the transformer, and it will take the bytecode over to Jakarta namespace for you. E10 is the current release. 11 is sort of current. 11 has a lot of stuff. It's now halfly released. So this is how it looks like today. We also looked at some of the E12 things. Web profile, end of the month. And currently, we are on 17 and 21. But as you saw, all the demos I ran today was on 24. And if you want to learn more about Jakarta EE, this is based on Jakarta E10. So you have to be fast until it's not relevant anymore. So there's a course on LinkedIn Learning that you can use and get a nice label on your profile. If you want to learn more about Jakarta EE, you go to jakarta.ee. If you want to just try it out quickly, go to start.jakarta.ee. You can generate a Jakarta EE 11 core profile project there with the implementations that are available. You can follow me on my blog post and social media. And GitHub contains all the code samples I showed today. So thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.